It is time once again for Supercar Sunday. We're 190 kilometres north of Melbourne at Winton Motor Raceway. The 17th time this track has hosted a round of the Australian Touring Car Championship. You couldn't ask for better conditions on race day, or in fact, a better crowd. It is simply spectacular today. Good afternoon, this is Matthew White alongside Neil Crompton in commentary as we take a look at the rules of play today. 300 kilometres, the rules have not changed since our last round at Eastern Creek. That is 100 laps around here. The pit window opens on lap 2 and closes on the end of lap 73, and they will once again stop for tyres and fuel. The conditions today, crystal clear, great for the spectators. There should be around 30,000 people here today, but there's no clouds in the sky, and that is a bit of a concern for the drivers because the UV rays really do affect the grip of this circuit. We'll talk more about that a little later on. The state of play, what's happened so far? Look at this. Marcus Ambrose has done it again, and no wonder he's laughing. A $5,000 check courtesy of Munro for claiming pole position. That is the 10th pole position of his career. As far as the playground we're at, Winton, 12 turns, 3Ks.
At a great track, but it's puzzled a lot of people this weekend because the grip has been elusive. You can see the layout here. This is the new extension through turns 10, 11 and 12. Lap record held by Jason Bright. He holds the qualifying record too, but we're on board this weekend with Mark Scaife. 225 km/h approach to turn 1. Climb the hill at turn 2, 3rd to 4th. 185 k's on the approach, back to 3rd gear at the end of the old pit straight, down the hill. Turn 4, 3rd to 4th. 185k approach, 150 k's here, but the speed continues to bleed down to 135 k's. Jump the strip on the right, 2 wheels, 2nd gear. Turn 7, very slow. Turn 8. About 80 k's across the face. Real tight and tough in traffic. Turn 9, 180 degree. Patience with the throttle. Use the berm on the exit. 2nd, 3rd, 4th. 190k approach. Back to 2nd. Right opposite the pit building. Make a blue here and all the crew sees it. 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Briefly to 5th. Watching the bumps on the approach to 11. 2nd gear. 85 k's across the face of the corner. The short chute goes nowhere. Off turn 12, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 225 k's. 100 laps of that today.
It's a long, long way at this circuit. Mark Scaife, a winner here back in 1992, surprisingly has never won here in a V8 supercar. Maybe that'll change today, but he'll have to knock off this bloke, Marcus Ambrose, who's at the front of the grid. Let's get down to pit lane and check out the very latest. Good afternoon, Greg Rust.
Good afternoon to you, Matty. Last round, of course, was a disaster for the Holden Racing team with punctured front tyres and damaged front rims. Now, between Eastern Creek and Winton, they've done a lot of soul searching, and what they've discovered is a problem may be brought about in part by the introduction of the new double A-arm suspension for VY Commodore. Here's a look at one of the new rims, which has a slightly different offset to last year. And these are new captive wheel nuts, which sit inside the rim like that. What they've discovered, courtesy of Eastern Creek's high lateral corner loads and sawtooth curbing, is that it needs to be torqued up 30% tighter than last year. That's why they started developing the problem at Eastern Creek. They've spent 200 man-hours to ensure that they get it right in pit lane here this weekend. But there's some good news, though, in the Ford camp, Darryl.
Yeah, there's been a few big birthdays this weekend, Rusty, with the Ford teams, and one of those especially is Glenn Seaton. Now FPR have 2 BA Falcons along in that team. Speaking of AUs, Bernard's updated to the AU, and they've also been given the big present with extra 60mm on that front splitter. Not a significant difference around this racetrack here at Winton so far, but looking to match the VXs in future rounds.
All right, thank you, Darryl and Greg. Check in with you as the race gets underway. They're gridding up for their warm-up laps, so let's do the grid and see that Marcus Ambrose is in pole position. Back-to-back poles in the championship for 2003, and in fact, back-to-back poles here at Winton because that's where he started from last year. Russell Ingall, that's his highest qualifier of the year. Mark Scaife, that is his lowest qualifying position of the year.
And Stephen Richards was expected to run the new car this weekend, elected not to because of insufficient spare parts, but very happy when he tested it here last week.
It was an interesting top 10 shootout. It featured young Jamie Whincup, a 20-year-old, in 9th position, obviously benefiting from the fact that GRM test here at Winton. Garth Tander, his teammate, will start in position number 11, and Craig Lowndes down in 14th.
And very unhappy about that. He was one driver badly affected by the stoppage in the first qualifying session when there was a mistake made at the end of the session. He was on a hot lap. He didn't get to do the time he expected.
Lowndes, he's never qualified better than 6th here at Winton. You can see Paul Wheel there in 16th, Stephen Ellery in 17th, Glenn Seaton has a new BA, as Darryl mentioned. He's a two-time winner here.
And Paul Dumbrell has a new engineer, Barry Ryan, with him this weekend. He starts out of position 19.
Coming down now to the rear of the field, Stephen Johnson in car 17 will begin from position number 21. Cameron McConville's had a long, busy week since we last saw him. He's completed Targa Tasmania and was a class winner as well. Jason Bargwanna is a little further down the list. He is also a two-time winner at Winton, starting from way back in 27th, and his teammate and team boss, in fact, will start from 32nd. There are 34 starters this weekend. Bringing up the rear of the grid is Greg Ritter and Rodney Forbes. There's a lot to talk about at Winton. It's only a 3-kilometre track. The turns 1 and 2 can really be a disaster. It's a bottleneck. Take you back 12 months. Look at this. They go in there 3 or 4 wide, but at the end of it, only 2 can come out side by side. And you can see the result. This will happen time and time again. When the race drivers get a little too hot at the start, can't control themselves and want to push it in there 3 or 4 wide. Mark Scaife also had his troubles last season. He was looking pretty good, but the Holden Racing team dropped the car on the rear left wheel, and that pretty much ended the day for Mark Scaife, his chances of collecting a win here at Winton. What lies ahead today? I think a fair bit of drama, but judging by what we've seen in practice, warm-up, qualifying and shootout, Marcus Ambrose has plenty of time on his side as far as speed in that Ford BA. Craig Lowndes wants to break a duck here. I said that he's never qualified better than 6th. He's never finished better than 6th.
And expect to see some unusual strategy perhaps from Lowndes in this race by virtue of how far down the field he is as we go on board there with Stephen Johnson.
Great conditions here at Winton. 300 kilometres. We're going again into uncharted territory. We're good to go. Let's go racing. Oh, good start from Greg Murphy on the right-hand side from Ambrose. This is where it all comes to the crunch. Turns 1 and 2. Ambrose sneaks back ahead. So Murphy slots back into second. To 34 cars going to turn 1 and 2. No, only 33 to, and David Bernard is the one who suffers. It's almost guaranteed trouble at the start as we take a look at Paul Morris inside the top 10 for the first time this season. Ambrose shoots away as they go around turn 4.
Pretty tidy start, all things considered. The approach to turn 1 here funnels down from being potentially 3 cars or even more wide down to about a couple of cars owing to the race line. The boys got through there pretty cleanly on balance, with the exception of David Bernard, who ended up out there in the green stuff, but no apparent damage done at this point. And you can see the effect, Matthew, of the tripping over of each other in the opening lap. This is the leading bunch. Look how far back these 30-odd cars extend. If you're towards the middle or the back of the pack, that'll add a good 5 to 10 seconds on your standing lap time, which obviously has a profoundly negative effect on your race day.
Quite surprising to see David Bernard, who started in 30th position, be one of the casualties at turn 1. Normally the mid-pack is the gang that gets caught up there, because that's where all the activity starts to happen. The rush of blood at the start of this race. 100 laps around this 3-kilometre circuit. We'll take you through the order as they cross the control line. Ambrose first, a standing lap, a 1:29. Greg Murphy second, Bright third, Russell Ingall fourth. So they all hold on to their starting positions in the top 4. Scaife fifth, Rick Kelly sixth, Stephen Richards seventh, Todd Kelly is in 8th position.
Everybody will be starting with the maximum capacity available in a V8 supercar of 120 litres of fuel. Because of the length and the fuel burn at this racetrack, which is, depending on which team you talk to, in approximate terms about 2 litres per lap, you're going to need to basically run all the way to about the midpoint of the race before you then take on fuel to get you through to the end. Remember, the pit window opens here between laps 2 and 73. We go on board with Greg. This is the margin first to second. When they crossed the start-finish line at the end of the standing lap, it was 0.5 of a second. Murphy's the only one at this stage that's holding that pace that Ambrose is setting. board with Craig Lowndes, who made a shocking start. Bogged down, didn't get the launch. Remember the weight over the rear tyres, very heavy. The middle option diff at this track, it's a 3.5. And Craig would be disappointed to have dropped so many spots. And then he ends up in the marbles going through turn 1, 5 spots in total. Oh, someone gets turned around on the exit of 2. I think that may have been Stephen Ellery.
I'm pretty sure it was. Car number 31, Stephen Ellery, got turned around. As Neil mentioned, 5 spots down the drain at the start for Craig Lowndes. Started in 14th, crossed at the end of lap 1 in 19th, has picked up 1 more spot. So he's up to 18th now. Big crowd here on hand, and they're seeing some pretty good stuff throughout the warm-up session this morning, the qualifying and shootout we had today.
We've definitely got a racetrack today, Matthew, which is more normalised in its performance. The astonishing thing yesterday was just how slow the track was, which really had a lot of people baffled. People that test here that have got great understanding of this racetrack have been here as recently as a week or 2 weeks ago and recorded good times, have come back and been completely at sea. And it's astonishing that in the case of the pole sitter, a Queensland-based team that does not do any miles here, turns up, does a wonderful job of engineering their car to perfection, and they do such a good time. And at the moment, he's skipping away. He's at a 0.8 second margin over Murphy, and his last lap time was a 1:24.6 with a full load of fuel. That's a pretty handsome time.
Their philosophy at Stone Brothers Racing has been simply hard work. Marcus Ambrose kind of said tongue-in-cheek, don't really know what it is here, but we seem to do okay in the pole position. I understand somebody's gone off. Yes, that is Jason Richards.
I'm sorry.
In Team Dynamic. And that was in the approach to turn 11. Along that back straight. On Friday qualifying, both Team Dynamic cars had a couple of offs.
Well, on Friday, the number of people that actually went off the circuit was amazing. I began to make a list, because not that often do you see people go off, but the list ended up being that long. I threw the bit of paper away. There were more people that had gone off than hadn't gone off, and you can see here that Richards is giving a helping hand at turn number 10, that one is, and it was one of the Orcon cars that did the damage there.
Yeah, it was Jason Bargwana, just tagged him on the rear left, spun him around, and quite a few had to dig around the dirt to get out of it. So we're on board now with Mark Scaife, who's looking at the rear of Russell Ingall's car. Scaife in position 5. Darryl Beattie.
Yeah, Larko's just come into the pits. Those guys have just told me there's no tyres out or fuel. They're having a look down the side here at the plug leads. And the talk is that this car has dropped a cylinder, so they're trying to fix it.
And the big issue here this weekend, even in perfect circumstances, is you do not want to go 1 lap down, and it's easy to do. Very easy to do. If you're more, and Anthony Tratt slides off in the Toll IPEC racing entry. Been very wet here, not in the recent days, but in the recent past. And so if you go too far off, then you're going to be in real trouble. Apparently there was a plug lead off Mark Larkin's car, and that's what delayed him in the pits. The point that I was going to make is that if you're much further than about 36 seconds behind the leader on this racetrack, you run the danger of going 1 lap down. And that is a disaster as the afternoon and strategy unfolds.
Here's Garth Tander, who was out-qualified by his younger teammate, and the incident involving Anthony Tratt side-by-side with Rodney Forbes, but no contact, just a pirouette onto the green.
Now, I heard that this was going to happen. This is a bit interesting. The Shell Helix car of Stephen Johnson electing to do their tyre stop very early when the window is open, but this actually necessitates him doing a massive number of laps, 95 of them on a set of tyres, unless, of course, there is a safety car or some other opportunity later in the race that may get them onto the other set of tyres. But that is going to put a significant strain on the Dunlop control tyre. It'll test Junior's ability to be very judicious with that right foot and not use too much of the rubber. And it's not really a wear issue. There's 4 millimetres of tread depth in the tyre. Wear is not necessarily the problem here. It's that the tyres get hot and greasy and the feeling goes away in them and you end up sliding around the track rather than driving around it.
Greg Rust.
Neil, I just wondered if there was perhaps a problem for Steve Johnson. I've just had a look at all 4 tyres. There is no damage to the tyres which came off car 17. The team tell me, and I'm surprised as you are, that this was planned. Incidentally, Brad Jones's crew standing by for a stop as well. He's in.
Yeah, I heard a few people talking about this, but they were uncertain as to whether they were actually going to do it. Many people were going to judge the decision, Greg, on what actually happened at the beginning of the race and whether they felt they were being held up in traffic. The advantage is that you get to run clean air. by getting out of that group of cars that you're fighting with, and it may be costing you as much as a second or two a lap, it enables you to get out there and run your own race at your own pace. Bradley, for example, before the steering rack problem at Eastern Creek, by doing a similar strategy to this, was in net terms actually making real positions. And he's in car 21. Average lost time at this track last year, as Paul Dumbrell has the Go-Jacks going into the back of that car, so there's a problem there, was 48 seconds, and you can add about another 7 or 8 seconds on for fuel. So that's why there's a danger of going lap down. So problems for Dumbrell. Why are they putting that car on the Go-Jacks and sending it back to the bunker?
It's not good news. Paul Dumbrell has a new engineer. Barry Ryan came on board there on Monday, so he's getting used to a entirely new setup, and it doesn't seem to be working for him. But involving David Bernard.
This is up at turn 7. He gets off onto the exit ripple strip there, just past turn 6, and once you get out there, that's marbly, and the Vallelunga curving slippery, and he just ended up in all sorts of strife, and he went off for turn 5 as well, and he's having a real disaster afternoon at the moment. And you can see that it kind of, from first glimpse, looks okay out there until you try and guide a V8 supercar through there, and there's plenty of little culverts and
huge hazard stuff by the time you try and get back on. Down to pit lane, Greg Rust.
Matty, both Aussie Male Racing entries have now had their tyre stops done. John Bow was just in a few moments ago. Interestingly too, Neil, he made a rear roll centre adjustment. The team made a very slight adjustment, dropped it down a little bit. His engineer, Phil Curtis, tells me the reason for that is that John felt the car was a little bit taily.
Yeah, so he's just trying to ease some of the turn, some of the point out of the car and try and nurse those rear tyres, and he's probably only made a small adjustment, maybe 2 to 5 millimetres, just to take some of the nervousness out of the car. Sometimes a little fine-tuning adjustment like that can be just what you need. There's the margin first to second. It's almost the full length now of that parallel back straight opposite the pit lane complex. Last lap through it was 4.5 seconds. Looking further down, there's Jason Bright. That's the margin to him in third. We'll try and go down through the field for you. It's interesting that Marcus just continues to maintain about a 2 to 2.5 tenths of a second gap over Greg Murphy, and he just strolls away ever so gently and driving the car straight.
Time 1:25.46, gap to Ingle 2.5 seconds.
There you go. And it's interesting now that Marcus is the only one that's in the low 25s. His last lap was a 1:25.1, and all of the other key players are at 25.5 or more. In fact, some of them are now even drifting into the low 26s, which means that rear tyres are really beginning to hurt. Ambrose, Murphy, Bright, Ingle, Scaife, Richards, Kelly, that is Todd, Garth Tander, Maxie Wilson 9, Paul Morris 10. That's a good showing in the Sirame Wines entry. Qualified extremely well, been quick all weekend. And then Paul Wheel, Jamie Whincup continues to have a good strong weekend. Simon Wills in the Team Dynamic entry in 13. This battle here is Richards, Kelly, we're looking at the moment. This is 6, 7 and 8. Tander in 8, just slightly out of frame at the moment, and he's probably in a good spot. These guys are really having to work hard for their bacon. When you do that, it tends to work the rear tyres in particular a little bit harder.
Stephen Richards trying to maintain his composure inside the cockpit. He consistently comes under attack throughout these races for one reason or another, and today it's Todd Kelly's turn to have a few lunges at the rear of the Castrol number 11 car. Coming off an 8th placing at Eastern Creek, where he qualified 17th. Stephen Richards, his best performance of the year is his second in race 2. When we started this whole affair in Adelaide at Clipsal 500.
The thing that's awkward for Todd here as well is that he's buried so deep under the back of Stephen's car that that's not good for water temperature, in fact temperatures generally. And not only that, Stephen's car is also robbing him of vital downforce, and it doesn't take much to upset the balance of the cars. So what Todd's doing at the moment is probably the hardest thing he can do, and that's to shadow another car so close and still pick your ideal braking points, not pile into the back of him, keep the car accurate, keep the pressure on. Of course, what he wants to do is to pressure Stephen Richards into an error. That's typically unlikely. We saw great mental toughness from Richards in Adelaide, and that's a sign of great fitness, and he kept the pressure on Mark Scaife down there in a real solid, rock solid drive down there that was fast and mistake free. Here's Max Wilson we've talked about. has come climbing up through the pack, felt that they were making positive adjustments and marching forward with this car, and we're looking forward to the race to get some clean air and see where they can get to. Remember that his teammate has gambled on a different strategy, and Stephen has come in and taken tyres on lap 5, which means he's got the world's longest stint to do on the other set. That's the condition out there at the moment, which is actually just a fraction warmer than when we first started. The air and the track have gone up 1 degree. But and look at this battle here with Paul Morris. This is red hot. 10, 11, 12, 13. There's a whole bunch of people in this one. Paul Wheels, the agitator, in the DuPont Better electrical car. The Valvoline entry of Wincup, followed by the Team Dynamic car of Simon Wills, and then Craig Lowndes in the Cat FPR Falcon. So there's 5 cars, and Glenn Seaton not too far adrift either. So Seato's having a pretty reasonable run in the new car, and he's got a watching brief on his teammate. They were both very pleased about the fact that they had 2 cars the same in their camp now, because at least they can data share. Each driver can contribute, each engineer can contribute to the others. They can double their learning rate, and but they've had a pretty tough weekend trying to get their cars to work. Greg?
Well, Matty, in other racing categories, people at home may know, of course, that other categories use things like tyre warmers to get their tyres up to temperature. In V8 supercar racing, you are not allowed any artificial means of heating the tyres, so a number of teams are doing this today, just leaving them out in the sun so that they're up to pressure and temperature fairly quickly. Incidentally, we've got a hotter day today, so no one's really made any major pressure adjustments at this point in time, Neil, but they are watching very closely the track temperature.
And everybody's got their own theory on that, Greg, but ideally they're looking for about 30 pounds there or thereabouts, and more action in the commentary box here at the moment than there is out on turn 12, but that's another story.
Things are flying down left, right and centre. Here we go, let's get back to racing and concentrate on what Craig Lowndes is up to at the moment.
He always looks very relaxed, and but he drives the wheels off the car, but Craig himself is just stroking along. He's right under the back of the Team Dynamic car. And the Simon Wills entry is engineered by the man that engineered Craig Lowndes last year, Oscar Fiorinotto. So this is a terrific battle here, and nobody can afford to blink or the order will change. So Lowndes at the moment right down the order in 14th, but still really not too far away from an attacking position. And as this race unfolds, folks, we hope to be able to also expand on what happens in the middle, slightly foggy section of these races, where they take their fuel and their tyre stops, and obviously the order gets scrambled, and you end up in a situation where you have an actual leader at the time and then a theoretical leader after things unfold. And Network 10 has some new software technology that we're hoping to be able to show you this afternoon, which will help unscramble that, so that we've got a clear picture of what's likely to occur as things fully unfold, and we'll have more on that later. This is turn 11, the little bumps down there, Matty. You can see the little marks on the road kind of indicate where some people have locked brakes and the cars are not tracking over those bumps. And here's where you get the signalling on the left. Some people have asked why there's still signalling boards, given that everybody's got a radio. The radios tend to be, from time to time, unreliable, and you can get more information on your board if you need it, and you can focus on the thing that you need. Darryl?
Interesting down here, Neil, the strategies, obviously, with DJR bringing Stephen Johnson in early. These guys now getting a little nervous because Marcus Ambrose is on his tail or getting close to him now, slowly pegging it back, and all they can hope for now is a safety car.
Quite a few of the teams will be banking on a safety car. We normally see a few here at Winton, but this, remember, is the first time that we've gone flat out 300 kilometres from start to finish. Normally when we come here, it's a couple of races around 100 k's long. Different playing field today.
And we just saw Lowndes, but there's been at least another 10 odd cars. McConville's there, one of the Orcon cars, Craig Baird there in the Team Kiwi entry.
Just before we came back, Neil, Jason Bright slotted in for his stop. The reason why the safety car came out is this. Now, Jamie Wincup is on the right-hand side of Simon Wills. Wow!
Yeah, what happened was Wincup went wide at 1, and Simon Wills thought that there may be an opportunity to pass, but Wincup gathered it back up and got on with it. That put Wills in the marbles. No grip out there. I don't think there was any contact made. And look, he tried to make an opportunity work for him here, but there wasn't contact, and look at that, he's on the brakes, there's no grip. and Greg's got more.
Change the left rear tyre. Change the left rear tyre.
Neil, there's enormous damage down the left-hand side of the car. They've had the dent puller out. Both the passenger and rear door on car 44 on the left-hand side are being worked on.
The left and the front of it, the front of the
You can hear the frantic talk to Simon Wills. This is a real disappointment for Team Dynamic given their performance at East.
And Greg Avesco looking at the car saying you're going to have to tape that up. They've already done what they need to do with the left rear taillight assembly. Let's just yank it out and pitch it. But, and you can see that there's a bit of chaos
Worried about
down
the
there.
safety car, Neil. The safety car is coming onto the front straight, so they're trying to get back out again.
Yeah. There needs to be less screaming and less chaos in that show, and just calm things down. They've got a pressure situation, and the aim of the game is to obviously get the car calmly repaired, get it back out, get it in front of the leader, don't go a lap down.
Field bunches up once more, and word from Stone Brothers is that Marcus Ambrose has lost the air conditioning unit going into his helmet, or the function thereof.
That'd be nice.
But is still feeling kind of okay. Easily the warmest day that we've had here since we turned up and started practice on Friday.
Single file start, Matthew. There's not allowed to be any overlap between the cars, and nor is there allowed to be any more than 5 car lengths between cars in case a couple of teammates play a game. And you can see even the margin there between the Valvoline car and Paul Morris looked like it was pretty substantial. In fact, it wasn't him. But we're underway once more. Wills is right at the very back of the pack heading down towards turn number 11, and we go racing. This will be a nice breather for some of the rear tyres that have been a little stressed.
That's Wayne Wakefield in car number 24, who's down the order, of course, so Garth Tander sneaks by on the inside of him, and Wakefield ends up getting squashed a little bit wide. The effect of that incident for Simon Wills, as Neil mentioned, he's right now down the back of the field. I think he was hovering around about 11th or 12th when that incident happened. Jamie Whincup is now in 9th position on the timesheets.
See how straight Mark Scape's driving his car off the exit of turn 7. He's not arcing the car out at all. He drives around the inside of the corner, keeps the weight evenly distributed across the rear, and then tries to drive it as square and straight as he can to nurse those rear tyres. And it has a rubber band effect. There are places where Russell gets away, and there are places where he gets back, and those two are very even at the moment. This is a real good battle. He had a little bit of a look up the inside at turn 9, but has lost a bit of ground in this sector of the track, so he's probably, he'd have some frustration at the moment. He might feel as though his car's good in one area but not good enough in another. And this is typical of what happens on a track like this where cars are very close.
Normally it's a little bit of road rage coming after the safety car has been out on the circuit, but incident-free first lap post-safety car. The Shell Helix race update shows you that not much has changed at the front, only the gap. Thanks to the Audi being out on the track, Ambrose leads Murphy. Ingle, Scaife, Richards, Todd Kelly in 6th, Garth Tander 7th, Paul Morris in 8th, Whincup 9th, and Paul Radicic round out the top 10 on our race update. So, still not approaching the halfway mark just yet.
We've had, first glimpse, I'd say roughly half the field have done their tyre stop. Remember that given the amount of fuel the cars carry and how long they're out on the race circuit today, we're not going to see a fuel stop until we get to something in the order of about 45 laps odd into the race. McConville's been in, Craig Lowndes has been in. They both came in on lap 29 and took advantage of the safety car. Ditto for Paul Wheel on 28. Stevie Johnson came in super early. Max Wilson came in on 29. Bernard came in early. Baird came in that safety car opportunity, and so too did Stephen Ellery. Obviously, Simon Wills came in to deal with the damage. Jason Richards came in, and Jason Bright. And Bright, he's actually rejoined down the order in 14th at the moment. But by virtue of him taking that stop and the car speed that he's got, our computer's suggesting that at the moment he could be the net leader of the motor race. But we'll have more on that shortly. But as a few more people start to unfold their strategies, this little battle rages between Todd Kelly and Stephen Richards. This is the old pit straight at Winton. Heading towards the west, now they're heading north.
It's always hard to put these drivers in a box and really put a tag on them, but if you're searching ever for a word for Stephen Richards over the last couple of years, consistent has been the word that keeps popping to mind, and reflected in that second in the championship. He hasn't finished a race or a round this season outside the top 10. Visor up.
So he's pretty sweaty under there, so it's very warm in the car. I saw a graphic earlier suggesting a temperature in the high 20s, but it's possibly even more than that. And very difficult mentally when you just can't entirely do what you want to do with your own car when you've got somebody less than a car length away from you. You've got to be mindful of what they're doing. If for no other reason than if they take a wild lunge at you, you need to be in a position where you've got enough situational awareness that you can make an adjustment and save yourself from what might be, you know, a catastrophic contact between the cars, and you end up with damage and you're out of the game.
MotoGP, of course, is at Le Mans, and after sports tonight, Monday night, is 10's coverage. It should be tonight, after sports tonight. Valentino Rossi has pole position. Did that in the dry, and he will start from position number 1, so make sure you join the boys for round 4 of MotoGP. Troy Bayliss 14th, Andrew Pitt 21st, and Gary McCoy 22nd on the grid. Daryl Beattie.
It's interesting, guys, how you were talking about rear tyres on these cars, Neil, and I just spoke to Ross Stone and I said, how come you and HRT and a bunch of teams haven't pitted during that safety car? And as he said, rear tyres will be too marginal. We need to pit for rear tyres as late as possible.
Simon Wills came past pit lane just a few moments ago. His car currently sounding like a sprint car. It's obviously damaged the exhaust in that accident. Now, the officials in pit lane here are keeping an eye on it. They say it's okay for the moment, but they have been keeping a very close eye on noise here this weekend so far.
There's actually been a black flag issued now to Wills in car 44, and all weekend this has been a problem, Greg, as you know. Immediately opposite our commentary point on the old pit straight between turns 2 and 3, there's a noise meter. It also coincides with where the cars make a gear change between 3rd and 4th gear and occasionally bounce onto the hard cut rev limiter, which makes an enormous bang, and that's what's been spiking the noise meter here. I think the legal limit is 95 dBA, and this little battle incidentally involves Seaton and Bright. Bright's on fresh tyres. He is 13th. Seaton is 12th on pretty second-hand tyres at the moment, and Brighty tries to sneak up and does so going into 3. So Wills now is going to have to come in and deal with it, and that's going to be a hard one for them to figure out. What a lot of people have done, and there's a couple of cars, I've got a feeling that Morris's car has still got quite a visible one on it, but there are cars out there with shields over the exhaust to try and shelter, for want of a better word, the noise from the noise meter, and in particular this spiking effect where someone will drive around all weekend and they're not triggering the meter, and then they'll hit the hard cut at the gear change point between 3rd and 4th, and it'll show a huge reading all of a sudden. Right now that we've seen a couple of people take fuel, Paul Radisich, Dean Canto and Garth Tander have already taken...
Bounce is okay. Just the rear tyres are struggling a bit. If I had the rear bar up, I get good support. Rear tyres burn. Bring the rear bar down, and I get better traction, but not as good stability. We're halfway between, mate. Your call. Okay, mate.
So what is...
Give you a reset for us, mate.
This is great stuff, puts you right in the driver's seat. Fuel goes in. Daryl's on top of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Neil. You listen to Ross talk about those tyres. They didn't want to do it too early. They've gone for fuel first. But the other point is, as Marcus said, the roll bar adjustments front and rear in this car right now are spot on and right in the ballpark. He can adjust his car now and work perfect just with those.
And what they're saying there in that conversation that we were privy to, Daryl, is that, and we've got Paul Morris into the wall. I think that could be at the exit of turn 3. And that, I reckon, it's actually up at 7, between 6 and 7. So that may or may not trigger a safety car. What Marcus was saying is he split the difference with his rear bar, anti-roll bar adjustment. So he's got in the marbles there for Paul, and he's gone straight across the grass, which doesn't arrest the car, but the gravel does, thankfully. and he scoots just past the edge of those tyres, and the SC boards are being shown, which means safety car is going to be deployed. And congestion was a real issue on that series of stops, Matthew, and it's probably timely for us now to have a bit of a look at what the net position is in this race. As we look at one of the Kmart cars, Jason Richards is actually the leader on the road at the moment with Rick Kelly in for tyres, but the corrected order, when we look at the pit smart positions, is that Jason Bright, who's currently 12th on the road, we believe to be the actual leader of the race, with Maxie Wilson actually second in the corrected order. Now, let me just briefly explain as best I can. The computer takes into account the live timing data that's coming in constantly from the cars out there. It takes into account how long it takes to actually make a stop here, including a fuel stop, and it looks backwards at historic data as well in the way that the software is written. Tyre degradation is taken into account, and it projects an outcome. What it can't tell you is if somebody gets a cross-threaded nut in a pit stop, or whether someone fouls another in terms of the traffic. But it takes a snapshot of the data that's being recorded, is being recorded, and is likely to happen. So for those drivers that have yet to do their second stop, for example, it takes into account an average of what's likely to occur. And assuming that they are close to that average, we'll get close to an accurate outcome. And so we're seeing these guys at the moment battle for position. They're down the order in actual lap scoring terms, but we believe them to be fighting for the lead of the motor race.
So the yellow chip on the left is our pit smart position prediction of actually where they are in terms of race. But on the road, you can see there Craig Lowndes is actually 17th on the road.
And remember that Brad Jones again has leapt up the order a little bit like Eastern Creek, and Wakefield's gone off between 6 and 7. No, that is turn 3. Not too good with my picks on the corner numbers today.
You spent too many years going around here in circles. By my count, Cromley, I think 20 or 21 cars out of the 33 now that are racing. Oh, yeah, good work is...
Scapey getting aggressive there with either Kando or Radisich. Sorry, that's it.
20 or 21 of those 33 cars that are out on the track have completed both of their stops. Bradley Jones is missing the front end of the Aussie Mail Falcon.
The whole air dam's come off that car, and there'll be more to that story as well. And I was about to make... Oh, one of the HRT cars went straight ahead at 10, and it's Todd Kelly. Second race meeting in a row that's been a tough one for him. He was already held up in pit lane.
Oh, there's all sorts of drama there. There must be oil or something
down there. There must be a reason why people are firing into the paddock. Look at the debris on the exit of the corner down there. Massive amount of junk on the road.
Well, I wonder if Brad Jones has left something behind on his way through. It makes you wonder, because Todd Kelly just came in and just went straight ahead. There's the wreckage from the Aussie Mail front splitter. Brad Jones left it behind on the infield. And that's at the sweeper. That would have been a high-speed spin.
He was actually looking all right too strategically. He took his tyre stop early, had some clean air, and as you saw on the pit smart corrected order before, he was actually looking all right. And just as we mentioned it, for some reason or another, he's gone off on the infield on the exit of turn 5, on the outside of turn 5. Most people have done their job now, with the exception of Jason Richards and Mark Noske, Jamie Whincup. Those guys, in fact, Noske's now done his stop. In fact, he's doing it. So Mark Schaefer's come out badly from all this stuff. He's down in 11th on the road at the moment. That'll actually improve when Jason Richards, Noske and Whincup shake out with their stops. But HRT have not come out of that sequence of stops in a strong position at all.
Been lots of behind-the-scenes activity at the Holden Racing team. Big turn, contact between Marcus Ambrose and Max Wilson. He's in the thick of it today. 360s it back onto the track. Didn't look as though it was too nasty in terms of damage to anyone. That's at turn 7 again. So 2 times in the last couple of laps, Max Wilson has been caught up in trouble.
Oh, look at that. That's a tough one to call. A tough one to call, because Marcus actually got further past him there in the initial approach. He did get beyond the B pillar, but then he had to try and get out of it a bit. They're the ones that give the stewards and the race team owners and the drivers real heartache, because obviously, depending on which colour you wear, you have a strong view, but they're very difficult to call. And Marcus may well have seen Craig pull that move off successfully a couple of laps earlier. And Dick Johnson will be jumping up and down. Max Wilson will be jumping up and down. You'd need to look at that, not only from that one angle either, and this is the other test for the stewards, and actually incidentally called before that Stephen Priest was the clerk. Of course, he's not this weekend. It's Bruce Robertson But this is the stuff that the officials have got to contend with. They've got to really take into account varying views. Vesco are actually considering and working on at the moment onboard cameras for the cars in each car, so that the judicial process can be more accurately adjudicated. See, this is the spot where it happened, up at turn 7. There's a little opportunity in there on the very inside to sneak through sometimes if the guy leaves a little hole, and that's what Max did. It was an invitation to Marcus, and he got in there, and then it got messy.
Just want to clarify exactly what's happening with the MotoGP on 10. That is tonight. Daryl Beattie will be heading back to join Woodsy and Rusty in commentary there. So Le Mans round 4, make sure you check it out. Valentino Rossi on pole. And then if you want to stay up late, you can catch what they call the greatest spectacle in racing, the 87th Indy 500, Michael Andretti's last race. 42 career wins for Michael, but never at the famous Indy 500. Helio Castro Neves, by the way, has pole for that one. So plenty coming up ahead on your home of motorsport, but there's still, well, a long way to go on this one, and quite a bit more drama to unfold, you get the feeling, as they all start to shake each other out. Marcus Ambrose, by the way, has the fastest lap, a 1:24.043. Let's just bring you up to speed on what's happened in that break, because it has only just happened. Marcus Ambrose has had the lasso out. He's been trying to catch Craig Lowndes, dicing for position number 2, and he got him right here at turn 7. Finally snuck on the inside. Lowndes had really had a mirror full of that Pertec BA Falcon. Jason Bright was out in front of them. Remember that Marcus Ambrose came in for his tyres on lap 42, and Lowndes had come in for his on 29. Lap 29. So the times were consistently going Marcus Ambrose's way.
Well, the thing was that congestion in the pit lane and general congestion around the circuit hurt the Stone brothers, but it played to Craig Lowndes' benefit. A lot of debris on the road exiting turn 2 there. Dean Canto went off before and left the front splitter behind. Marcus has got the fastest car in the race, and that's to his advantage at the moment. His last lap was a 1:24.9. Brighty's was a 1:25.1. When he was first hounding down Craig Lowndes, he actually recorded a 24 flat to be the fastest man in the race so far, and the fastest race lap. It still doesn't actually get close to the lap record set by the man in front last year, Jason Bright. Here's the battle for the minors. On the last couple of laps, Lowndes has just begun to flap a little bit, so he's now falling into the clutches of Greg Murphy. And when I say flap, it's not Craig so much as the rear tyres on his car. And that last lap, he actually dropped a pile of time, so he's had a little moment somewhere, I'd reckon, as a result of getting crossed up. So remember also that Craig has spent more time on those tyres. Oh, here's Russell getting crossed up, trying to make ground. Gee, he was a long way down the left-hand side, and that was why Canto lost that splitter in turn 1. So whilst the strategy worked for Craig Lowndes in terms of the on-track positioning, it hasn't worked because of the stress on the rear tyres. He came in, as you pointed out, Matthew, on lap 29, so the rear tyres have really had to work. 38 laps to go in this motor race, so it's a big mission, and his tyres are now showing signs of hating that.
Well, Jason Bright also came in and did his tyre stop on the same time as Craig Lowndes, so effectively Bright's tyres are 13 laps older than Ambrose's tyres behind him.
Yeah, and for example, the man that's currently harassing Craig Lowndes, Greg Murphy, he came in on lap 43 for tyres, so he's got much younger rubber on that car, and he's putting it to good effect.
Whoa!
Gotcha!
Whoa.
Now, poor old Craig, this is a weird one, and everybody involved in this is going to be hating it. Craig, because his car stepped sideways without any problem. Yeah, and
that was Murphy.
Yes. Yes. That's
okay,
right.
Rob's onto it, mate. Press on. Rob's onto it.
All the radio conversations telling the whole story. CL got crossed up.
Get them to clarify with his team. He's onto it, he's down there.
Greg's in a panic because he's worried. This is what I was about to allude to. He's worried that he'll be blamed for having nailed him. Here's the replay. And what happened was that Craig got sideways, and then Murph did make contact, but it was only after Craig got crossed up. Then the contact happened. Here's another angle, so this one's covered by lots of angles and wallop. The onboard camera tells the story the best. shots from outside the car make it look a bit damning. But on board, you see that Craig got very crossed up on the approach. Actually, car stepped wide. Murphy had nowhere to go. The stewards will look at it, no question. But you could tell that Murph was pretty anxious to get on to Rob and everybody back at Kmart. Lowndes, incidentally, has rejoined now in the process. He'll have dropped a lot of spots, but prior to that, he actually recorded a 23.8 to be the fastest man on the track. So that actually makes a bit of a mockery of the theory about the rear tyres dying, so I'm not quite sure how he pulled a 23.8 out, because that's a massive jump in speed for Lowndes. Look, this is the battle for the lead.
Incidentally, as Craig Lowndes went off, the debris that he picked up on the infield there, I think it was the rest of Brad Jones's car. As we take a look at the Kmart team talking with the Evesco officials, Greg Ruston's got more.
What you're looking at is Rob Crawford, team chief or crew chief from Kmart, talking to Paul Taylor from Evesco. Where they're headed is to John Russell from Ford Performance Racing. Murphy claims that Lowndes stepped out coming through the sweeper. Something wrong was wrong with his car, and he had to hit the brakes to correct it. Now, they've spoken to the team are verifying that. What they're trying to do is make sure the Evesco officials know that.
That's right, Greg, and that's all pretty accurate, what's being said there, but you know, obviously emotions run high in both directions in those issues. And, but I think you'll find that the driver's got a pretty clear picture of what happened from both cockpits, and we actually saw the best shot of that from the onboard replay. This is the battle for first and second. Here's the in-car view. Now this is looking the other direction, and it won't really show the yaw in the car from Craig's car. That's actually not a particularly good shot in terms of explaining what really happened, but it does give you another angle from the Strathfield replay.
In the meantime, Marcus Ambrose is so close to getting this race lead back off Jason Bright. Craig Lowndes, as you mentioned, did manage to put down the fastest time just before that incident. Robbie Crawford head down.
John Russell from FPR, the chief engineer, and John Matthews, the general manager from FPR. They were there with Paul Taylor from Evesco and Rob Crawford from Kmart in a little executive huddle discussing what their boys were up to out there.
The gap is 0.2 of a second. Next to nothing. See it as they come across the control line. We can check out the last times. A 1:25.4 for Jason Bright, 4.0, a 1:25.48 for Marcus Ambrose, a 1:25 flat for Greg Murphy in third position. Garth Tander is in fourth. Craig Lowndes stays there in fifth. Mark Scaife in sixth. And let's go back inside the cabin of Greg Murphy's car and see if we can dissect this a bit more.
Yeah, so Craig's going on into five here, and then right in the middle of the corner, after he's touched the ripple strip, there she goes, and Craig's grabbed the brake to correct it, and then Murphy's piled in, and that's the one that tells the majority of the story. So it started when Craig had the foot on the brake, the car noses forward, the longitudinal and the lateral G, the car rolls over its nose. He had to grab the brake to try and capture it, then he gets into the marbles and Murph gives him a smack, and that's pretty much the story there. So that's pretty frustrating. I'm actually a bit bewildered because Craig was really struggling in the high 24s, even low 25s, but the computer's saying all of a sudden in the middle of all that he punched out a 23.8, which I'm a little bit puzzled by. And his rear tyres, oh, a little contact there, a little contact there. Now Murphy's been given a drive-through. I actually find that a little bit hard to fathom. Greg?
Well, Neil, I'm as surprised as you. This makes no sense.
Greg,
what I can tell you is that in that conversation, that conference between John Russell from FPR and, of course, the Evesco chief and Rob Crawford, John Russell said he did not see the incident. He cannot say whether his driver had to get out of it, so they weren't clear. There was no pictures available to them at that point in time.
And change for the lead here, Greg. Sorry to interrupt, but meanwhile, we're talking to Greg Rust. Greg Murphy has gone ballistic, and Russell, should I say Marcus Ambrose? Oh, I've lost the plot here. Has gone to the lead. Can you save me, please?
Marcus Ambrose leads. Jason Bright is second. Greg Murphy has copped a drive-through penalty, and the life of the Kmart Racing team car number 51 driver is about to be tipped upside down when he comes into pit lane. He'll be absolutely on the limit. Marcus Ambrose, though, is back in the race lead. He's talking to his team, who are telling him, don't worry about those back markers. They'll get the blue flag if they don't get out of the way. Tim Schenken and the officials have been very serious about this after some back markers pretty much got in the way at Eastern Creek. Flash of the lights from Marcus Ambrose indicates to Stephen Johnson, I've got to come through. I'm leading the race. Johnson steps aside. Bright shuffles back to second. Drama continuing to unfold in the pits as Greg Murphy shoots off to do a drive-through penalty. Can you believe it?
I don't know what else he could have done in those circumstances, and this has got, this is not a partisan view one way or the other before Holden or Ford fans start sending emails frantically. What happened here is that Craig, with a car that had rear tyres, and you can see that Murph's just not happy. Craig has gone into turn 5. The rear tyres were a bit sad at that point. He's got on the brake over the ripple strip. The car's got sideways. He grabbed the brake. You can see the brake lights come on, and then Murphy's hit him, and then off they go. Now, the only thing that I can imagine is that the stewards feel that maybe the second part of the incident was avoidable, but I, having been around that part of the track 18 trillion times, can tell you that I just don't think that there's anything Murphy could have done about that. I really don't.
Makes you wonder whether that decision was made before they had a good opportunity to look at the onboard shot that we had. They get the same pictures as you're getting, and we can show it to you right again. So this is what Neil's
talking about. Brake lights just came on. I mean, the brake lights came on. What else is the bloke supposed to do? Craig can't do much. He's doing his best to control his car. It's got wide. I reckon it's a fairly questionable decision, and I think Murph's got every reason to be running pretty high oil pressure here.
Well, I think it's boiling inside that Kmart cabin at the moment. Todd Kelly here in car number 2. Down in 13th. The reason why, he's had a spin at turn 7. So he would have lost a couple of positions, make that about 15th by the time he gathers it together. So we welcome you back to Winton. Is in 5th position now, courtesy of this move on Craig Lowndes at turn 7 once again. Lowndes, incidentally, his times are dropping. This was door-to-door action that continued around 8.
Incidentally, Matthew, remember we talked before about him having recorded the fastest lap of the race? That was simultaneous with the moment with Greg Murphy. It was because he rejoined on another part of the track. It gave him a quick lap time, but in fact he'd been off the road, so that's a false fastest lap.
Yeah, and right now he's hovering around the 127s and slipping considerably. Now let's try and clean up this mess involving Greg Murphy and Craig Lowndes. We'll go straight to the source. Darryl Beattie has got Robbie Crawford from Kmart. Darryl.
Robbie Crawford from Kmart. Robbie, we all saw the footage of that with Murph, but seems like they've got it in for him.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Lowndes has a 3-foot slide through the sweeper and jams the brakes on, and Murph's got nowhere to go. Just looking at some footage there before, and with Richo following him, and he didn't even touch the brakes all the way through it, so seems fairly interesting.
What can you do with it now? Just deal with it after the race, but unfortunately it put Murph a fair way back now. He's going really well.
With a drive-through penalty, you've just got to cop it, and there's no recourse at all. So that's it.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Well, I'm up in race control with Colin Bond now, driving standards advisor to the championship. How did you guys view that incident between Lowndes and Murphy?
Well, it was fairly obvious, actually, that Lowndes was coming through the sweep, but Murphy was closing in on him and hit him up the back and just pushed him off the road. We've got vision of it now, and there's nothing to do about it. If someone punts somebody off from behind and they make an advantage from it, or if the person goes off and loses time, then the other guy's going to be penalised.
Murphy was quite adamant that Craig had a moment mid-corner, had to brake. That's when Greg collected him. Murphy is Murphy's defence justifiable?
Look, in these situations, if you run into the back of somebody and punt them off, it's sort of, it's really hard one to pick up on, but you just can't physically do that, so the fault's on the person behind, you've got to make manoeuvres and do it properly. We looked at it. It was a fairly good hit when he hit him and just punted him off, so I think that was the right choice.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
110% wrong, Colin Bond. We will buy you a television, maybe a colour one, so you can see red brake lights come on the preceding car. And I'm telling you, that is 10% wrong. Here it is in reality, folks. Craig gets crossed up, brakes, and the other car runs into him. That is one of the worst, if not the worst, stewards' decision I have ever seen. Garth Weekston, Peter Svensson, Keith McKay and Colin Bond, hang your heads in shame.
That's Neil Crompton's say on the issue. I'm sure Greg Murphy would have his say if he had his microphone plugged in. But when that incident unfolded and afterwards he got sent through pit lane, Murph ripped the lead out into his microphone back to the team. So he's been out there racing in silence at probably 110 degrees inside the cockpit. PlayStation 2 race score, regardless of all that stuff, says that Marcos Ambrose is looking good to collect back-to-back round victories in the championship. He's got a 4.3 second lead, make that 3.9 second lead now over Jason Bright in second. Gar Tander is holding on to third. Mark Scaife is up in fourth position. Stephen Richards is in fifth. There's just a couple of people on that list that you can see there. Paul Radicic has moved up 16 positions. A good performance as well from Jason Bargwanna, who's moved up 15 positions throughout this race. And also someone else who bypassed us on the way was Paul Wheel, who's now moved up 10 positions from his start. But gee, it's been impressive from this man, no question. He had awesome race speed at Eastern Creek. They've come here to Winton and just continued it from the word go. They've looked so good in practice, in qualifying, held it together in the shootout to get his second pole of the year, the 10th pole of his 30-race career. Can you believe it? 30 starts from Marcos Ambrose, already 10 pole positions, one in every 3 starts, starting from the front of the grid. Only a young career in V8 supercar racing, but one, if it continues like this, is probably destined for greatness. There's Paul Radicic, the Team Better electrical car, who's done a good job, up into 9th position at the moment.
Poor old CL's just battling there at the moment, as you said, Matty. He's just drifting. The rear tyres are really just not delivering the balance and outcome that he needs out of the Cat car at the moment. Ambrose, Bright, Tander, Scaife, Richards, Wheel, Ingle, Lowndes, Radicic and Bow. That's the top 10. Then Wilson, Bargwanna, Kelly, Seaton, Murphy in 15th. Baird, Kelly, that is Rick, Anthony Tratt. And Ambrose just continues to look pretty comfy here at the moment. 4.1 seconds. Remember that Ingle has had to do a lot of work here to recover from that stop of his where I think it was the front right wheel was tardy. They had a problem, a cross-threaded wheel nut, and that really held him up, and he's now having to recover from what was an otherwise competitive showing early on.
Paul Wheel in car 16 is headed for his best ever finish here at Winton. It's been a turnaround year since he changed camps. Stepped out of the K&J car right now though. Russell Ingle is having a look on the outside, now the inside at turn 8. This is Wheel in position 6, Ingle in position 7. 23-year-old Queenslander Paul Wheel got his first podium finish at Adelaide after everything was sorted out post-race. In fact, collected the 3rd place off the man who's now chasing him down. So a good little fight going on between 6 and 7. There's your little telecast list for round 10 of the AFL on Saturday afternoon. Check your local guides for that.
21 to go, Russ. 21 to go.
Oh, that's still a lot of laps when you hear that message.
And that's your Saturday night footy as well on Network 10. It is remarkable, isn't it, just how much of a difference it makes when you come here in the last couple of years, have 2 100k races and now the 300k race. This is the 3rd 300k race of the year. It changes again when we go to Perth, Barbagallo Raceway for the next round. We go back to a bit of a sprint formats. So
just to go back to this other thing that I'm still sitting here fuming about at the moment, Matthew, is that
why does that surprise me, Neil?
Just these blokes wind me up sometimes. The reality is that Craig was not doing anything wrong either. That's the point we need to make. He's got onto the ripple strip and the car's got crossed up. His natural reaction is to go for the brake pedal to try and keep the car straight and corrected and on the black stuff. That's his mission. He's doing exactly what he should do. Greg's doing exactly what he should do, which is to try and avoid. But you're so committed in there. The car's already passed its grip threshold on the front right-hand corner. You're basically guiding the car as delicately as you can at its absolute grip limit. I think he's going to do actually just stop it. I mean, I cannot believe that decision. I really can't. I shouldn't make such forthright remarks, but because the umpire has a tough call, but by gee, that is an average one. That's absolutely average.
You know, the beauty of television is that once it's out there, Cromley, so you can't take it back.
Oh, well, I'm not taking it back. I don't care who I have to brawl. I'm not taking it back. I'll go down there with Murph and swing fists if I have to. I mean, they're just, these guys sometimes are absolutely out of shape.
Russell Ingall stays behind him in 7th. At the front, Marcus Ambrose is your race leader. Now with a 6.1 second gap over Jason Bright. You can see it on your Shell Helix race update. Garth Tander is in 3rd. Mark Scaife has been putting quite a bit of pressure on the Gary Rogers Motorsport Commodore. And there you go, Wheel and Ingall, that battle that we're looking at right now. The field starting to stretch out in the closing stages. A little bit wide for Wheel, and Ingall wanted to take advantage before he came into the sweeper. Almost an instant replay of what happened with Lowndes' car. Dare I mention it, but Paul Wheel holds onto it, and Russell Ingall can't get past that time.
Yeah, and Paul's starting to look pretty vulnerable. The back of his car's fanning around a lot. And Russell's applying the pressure, and it's just been a good solid run from him in car 9 to try and recover from that slower stop early. Wheelie was really battling through turn 5. Then you got a great shot of how much of a battle he was having in the mid to late part of the corner. Russell just has to be patient here and try and make the gap when he can without making contact. Right up under the back of this thing into turn 11. And there's probably no real opportunity here in the next couple of corners unless he gets an unbelievably good exit. It looks like his strength is in the middle part of the track at the moment. So the order is Ambrose, Bright, Tander, Scaife, Richards, Wheel, Ingall, Radisich, Lowndes, still battling, complaining of obvious oversteer, and then Bow, Kelly, Wilson, Bargwana, Seaton, Murphy, Baird, Kelly. Traddy's down in 18th.
Been a pretty good year for Paul Wheel so far, as I mentioned before. He's now 8th in the championship. He'll be boosted considerably because he's got another 162 points on board if he stays this way.
Russell lost quite a bit of ground on that lap, and that's taken the pressure off Paul. Looking beyond Tratt, you've got McConville as the next man. It's been a fairly quiet day for him. They've talked about the fact that they just can't get that car to work around this track. The Eastern Creek knowledge that they gain from testing doesn't apply to them here. This little battle here, Ambrose, Ingall and Stephen Richards on lap 84 are the fastest guys. Scaife made a blue then down at 10. It's actually a great little battle unfolding between all these guys, and you know, when Mark makes a blue like that, it lets Stephen get in the game. This is not resolved, and everybody's at the walking wounded stage of this motor race.
Garth Tander in the VY Commodore, the Aurora engine underneath. Mark Scaife in the hybrid VY. And Stephen Richards in the VX, yet to adopt his new car, the 41st race Commodore built by Larry Perkins. Over the years, it'll probably be on show the next round.
Whincup in with something going on. Got the left front plucked off it there at the moment. Incidentally, Russell's tyres are much younger than the tyres on Paul Wheel's car. Russell came in for his tyres on 43. Paul Wheel did his on 28. So those that took the early option for rubber are really having the scramble right now.
The battle group that we're focusing on is effectively a shot at the podium as dramas and dramas continue there for young Jamie Whincup, who, remember, started inside the top 10 but is now sliding all the way down courtesy of this unscheduled stop. Jamie Whincup's day started terrifically, held his composure well in the shootout. He's done quite a few laps here in testing, of course. The rest of the circuits that we go to this year will pretty much be fresh for Jamie Whincup. Tander versus Scaife versus Richards. Can Scaife climb up and get third position on the podium, knock off Tander? Well, the numbers over the course of his career say he's more than likely to do it because he's got a 50% strike rate on podium placings.
Incidentally, just a snapshot of the lap speed at this point in the race. Ambrose last lap 1:25.9, 6/10 of a second quicker than Bright, 26.5. Tander at 26.1, Scaife at 25.7, so he's actually got real pace. Richards at 25.9, that's Stephen Richards. Paul Wheel also 25.9, Russell at 26 flat. So that gives you a little idea of the leading bunch. So Scaife's got pretty good pace in that number 1 car at the moment, but not in a position to really be able to put it to good use. He made a little blue back there at turn 10 as Wincup's car goes into the garage. Ellery clears the track up there at 7 to let the pack go through in the super cheap Falcon. Now Scaife's getting much closer to the back of Tander again, who looked like he was battling. He had a real moment exiting turn 12 a few minutes ago. Had to really gather the car up. Greg, what have you got for us?
Well, Neil, we thought at this point in the race we might get the audience's attention at home by just sparing a thought for the pounding these things have taken during the race. These are a look at 2 different types of brake discs off a V8 supercar. In size, they're massive. In fact, an average road car disc brake would fit on the internal section here of the brake disc. You'll notice that there's some cuts here in the metal material. That's designed to aid the disbursement of gases and brake pad material and things like that. Up the top here, a number of vanes. In fact, there's around 48 vanes on these ones, and they can get as high as 72, which aids the cooling on the disc. On average, these things cost around $700. You'll get 1 race meeting out of them, and of course, they need brand new ones for each time we venture out for a new meeting.
Thanks, Greg. And you got the little blue rust bucket off to the side there with all your bits and pieces in it, and that gives us a good look at a brake rotor off a V8 supercar. Those, apart from dispersing gas on those slots on the disc face, they also give you bite. The friction that you need to pull the cars up. This is Jason Richards.
Car 45 and Team Dynamic. Turn 7, some contact there with Garth Tander in the end, but the spin was well and truly underway at that point. So Mark Scaife drops down to 7th position, and then Richo decides to have a crack at Garth Tander. He did so at turn 11. Tander thought he could get it back at turn 12. Look at this, coming back onto pit straight. But Stephen Richards ends up holding off the charge from the Repco Valvoline Cummins Commodore. And also just behind these guys, Russell Ingall has finally got past Paul Wheel in the fight for 5th and 6th. It wasn't pretty, but he made it. The Enforcer gets past and collects 5th position. So the order is this. Marcus Ambrose leads the race. Jason Bright is 2nd, 10 seconds behind. Stephen Richards is in 3rd. As you can see, there is 3 laps to go. Then Garth Tander, Ingall make up your top 5. And there on your PlayStation 2 race score, Paul Wheel, who started in 16th position, is heading for 6th.
The couple of those moves were great moves, weren't they? Really good motor racing. Richo on Tander and then Garth coming back. That was good stuff. There was no contact between them. There was racing room between both guys. And then terrific stuff up the top of the track between both Ingall and Wheel. Scaife thought he may have had a big enough gap to get the job done, then realised that he wasn't able to get it done, locked the rear brakes and kind of penalised himself in the process. And he's rejoined in 7th placing at the moment. The fastest man of the leading contenders at the moment is actually Stephen Richards. He's got a few tenths on his nearest rivals. There's actually quite a few people buried further down the field that have actually got quite good pace, but they've not been able to get themselves strategically in the right position during the day to be able to use it. And I think there's a couple of surprises here, Matthew, that would have expected more safety car action perhaps in this race, and there'll probably be a few people who could be potentially a little bit marginal on fuel right towards the end. Here's Richards with 2 to go. This will really consolidate his position in the championship. He's been a contender throughout the year.
Not to mention that of Jason Bright as well, who's going to get 186 points. That'll put him, well and truly at the top of the list where he already is. This means that he'll go to 717. He should lead the championship by 51 points to Richards. And Russell Ingall should finish up 3rd. Marcus Ambrose's victory here, assuming it all goes to plan, will move up to 5th in the championship. But let's concentrate on that when we get there. Inside the cabin, it's 30 degrees. You could expect probably a little bit more, given that they've been out there for nigh on 100 laps. Air and track temperature now not making too much of a difference. A little bit of splash of fuel for Todd Kelly.
Well, I just said a minute ago, I thought there could be some people trapped on fuel, and it certainly won't have improved his afternoon. It's been a hard one.
Before the break, I mentioned that the last Ford to win here was back in 1998. If you're wondering who it was John Bowe, who has moved up into 10th position, which will be his best finish of the season so far. And that's some good news at the end of a tough day for Aussie Mile Racing. that number on your screen if you want to be part of V8 Superstars in Perth. Taped on June the 9th. Please call it. We understand Garth Tander has a problem. Yes, he does. Slowing right down. Oh, that's at the back straight there.
I wonder if it's fuel. I wonder if it's fuel. He'd be looking for the reserve. That'll be fuel the way he's shaking that car. That's what it'll be.
He came in for fuel on lap 38. So Garth Tander is now watching the world go by.
Well, gee, I just had an inkling that some people would have gambled on there being more safety cars, and sure enough, there are some that have just stretched it too far. It's proven to be a bit of an exciting format this afternoon.
Well, it's thrown up everything, hasn't it? Marcus Ambrose, though, has been so calm as he is. There was only 2 Fords in the top 10 shootout, but now there is 6 Fords in the top 10 placings to finish this race. What a turnaround for the Blue Oval. And if Marcus finishes off this, which he surely will, it'll be the first time in 8 years that a Ford driver, the same Ford driver, has won back-to-back rounds in the championship. Glenn Seaton did it last in 1995. Remember, Marcus Ambrose was the winner of our last round at Eastern Creek.
It gives Mark Scaife a bit of a break too. He picks up another spot as a result of the Tander situation. So, is that Tander's car? Yes, it is. Off between 1 and 2, no fuel.
That's
Goodness
the end of
man.
that.
Unbelievable.
In the hunt for a top 4 finish, and Garth Tander has run out of fuel.
Alan Jones used to say, if a car's going to stop on you, better to do it on lap 2 than on lap 98. At least you didn't have to do all that unnecessary hard work.
Terrific scenes as Marcus Ambrose came around turn 4 there. A big crowd at Winton. He's got the lights flashing because he's already enjoying this victory. Back-to-back wins, back-to-back wire-to-wire wins. Started from pole at Eastern Creek and took it all the way. Started from pole here at Winton and will take it all the way as well. But the drama behind him is still unfolding. Our word is that Russell Ingall is also suffering fuel problems. He may not make it to the finish line. He's currently in 4th position. On board with the Enforcer, he's still moving, which is always a good sign, but he's 4th at the moment and rapidly running out of juice. No dramas whatsoever for Marcus Ambrose, and you've got to take your hat off to this guy because he's just done it so well. There he was in the shootout and took pole. It is a Blue Oval bonanza at Winton as Marcus Ambrose goes back-to-back in the championship. What a win.
Yeah, great job. Beautiful car all day and drove it well. Went through that pressure phase in the middle with traffic to deal with. Rusty got home. So Russell in 4th. So good day for Ford.
Not a bad day at all. Jason Bright, of course, 2nd. Stephen Richards 3rd. The 4th career win for Marcus Ambrose.
Considering the tough day and the slipperiness of the rear of his car, Lowndes, good job also for 8th. Oh, that has to be the saddest story in the pit paddock at the moment. Garth Tander having worked his backside off all day, only to run out of fuel at the critical moment.
Make it official, the Shell Helix race score. Marcus Ambrose wins, Jason Bright gets 2nd and Stephen Richards gets 3rd. Well, the Ford boys have done it again. Wrap it up after this. Another extraordinary day of racing ends with Marcus Ambrose standing tall once again in the V8 Supercars Championship. That is the first win of his career here at Winton. Jason Bright and Stephen Richards round out the podium. There were 6 Ford Falcons in the top 10 after only 2 Fords started in the top 10 at the end of the shootout. The championship point score, well, Marcus collects 192 for today's efforts, but Jason Bright remains on top of the championship after 4 rounds in 2003. 717 points, Mr. Consistency yet again. Richards in 2nd, Ambrose has moved up to 4th. Let's hear from our race winner.
Well, Marcus Ambrose, 2 rounds in a row. How does that feel?
I tell you, mate, I'm dizzy. You know, 100 laps around this place is pretty hard. So there was a lot of pressure early on in the middle part of that race because, you know, we were down the back. We didn't get the strategy right and had to really charge on when the tyres are fresh. Really wore me out. You know, the last 25 laps were a killer.
Great effort by you and Stone Brothers, mate. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, Rusty.
Yeah, he's a very happy man, but this is the incident that everybody will be talking about. We've got Craig Lowndes with us, Neil.
Well, Craig, that's the replay. It's the first time you've seen it from behind. What was your view?
Well, really, as you can see, I can get myself into my own trouble without Greg doing anything. But look, no, Greg and I made contact, and look, they penalised Greg. It's their decision, the judges. Mate, I don't really necessarily agree with it, but that's what they've done.
Rear tyres were pretty sad.
Well, they were after the contact. The left rear guard was rubbing on the tyre, which made right-hand corners pretty difficult. But look, that's the result. That's what happened. But look, I'm sure there'll be some more outcomes this.
Everybody will be talking about it for a while. Thanks, CL.